On today's show, we got 3 new e-bikes, one from Mondraker, one from Cotic, and one from Pivot. But first of all, we did a motor test a few weeks ago, and it was pretty telling. It was pretty crazy to test the Bosch and the Nikolai with the Pinion MGU, and the bike that everyone's talking about, the DJI with the Avinox motor, the Amflow, I should say, with the Avinox motor. Will is here. We got Adam in the studio. We're in a new studio, actually, which is pretty cool.
Woo!
It's definitely a work in progress. You guys look like you're sat in a little box room, but you're actually just in front of me, and I've got loads of space behind me. So welcome to the new space, guys.
Thank you.
So we did a motor test video a couple of weeks ago, and it was really interesting because I wanted to compare the new DJI Amflow with the Avinox motor that's got a peak of 120 newton meters versus the Bosch with 85 newton meters, a brand new Gen 5 Bosch, and also the Nikolai Pinion MGU. I think they're the motors that have piqued everyone's interest.
100%. Talking of numbers, this is because you mentioned about the max torque on the Avinox. Not to mention that technically the Pinion MGU is a higher newton meter torque, right? In certain gears, it's 160. Is that right? So that's it's weird, but it's the true. This video is a true telling that numbers aren't everything, right?
But it was only a short drag race, so numbers are not everything. And I think in certain situations, the Pinion MGU might be better at climbing, like really slow rock crawls, that type of thing.
But when we say better, that I mean more powerful, is more torquey, more capable.
It's so hard, man. Like, we've been lucky enough to been riding quite a few different bikes recently. Will and I were super lucky. We went to Whistler last week. Will had the Avinox, the DJI motor, out there. And I guess...
What were you riding, actually?
I was riding the Bosch.
Yeah, on what bike? The Crestline RS180.
The new Crestline. And I got a story to tell, actually. This is how powerful the new Avinox motor is. So we're riding up to a trail called Dark Crystal. It's a really good trail in Whistler. It's a climb. I don't know how far it is, but it's a climb to get there. It takes
Whistler. It's a giant mountain range. Like it's not like climbing up the Surrey Hills, you know.
Let's say it takes 15 minutes to climb up to it, right? So how long did it take?
Way more than 15 minutes.
Right,
15 minutes.
Let's
5-0.
say whatever. It was a long climb. It was longer than swimming in the Surrey Hills. So I'm on the Crestline with a new Gen 5 motor in turbo, right? Troyden, who runs Crestline, and he was also on the Bosch Gen 5 in turbo. So we're both on the latest generation Bosch in turbo going up the hills. Will is on the Avinox.
Look how slick he looks.
And I don't know, what mode were you in on that?
Mostly turbo. It depended.
So you were flicking the turbo 30 seconds.
The boost.
You were spamming the boost.
The only time I felt the need to turn the boost mode on was when I wanted to make a point of overtaking them.
So here's the thing, right? So he would cycle past us. We're spinning and in turbo, and he's like, we're looking like SL bikes in comparison to his bike. Given he is lighter than us.
I was going to say a fair bit lighter, no?
About 10, 15 kg lighter.
But that is not enough to make such a big difference. But here's the real thing, the real killer, right?
Go on then.
He was able to tow Troyden on the Bosch with Troyden in boost, and he overtook me while I'm in turbo.
What?
Not just slightly, started disappearing into the distance.
He's a big dude as well, right? Troyden. He's like 6'3".
Yeah. He's probably about the same weight as me, probably about 100 kilos. I would have thought so, but taller than me. That's crazy.
So he can tow another Bosch.
I don't want the DJI to just be that much of a trump card to everything else.
And honestly, getting off because I didn't ride it that much in Whistler, it was Will's bike that he was riding, but getting off it and going on it like temporarily, it does make the other full power bikes feel like they're like a Fazua motor in comparison to the Avinox. So I don't know, Will, you rode it for a week in Bellingham and Whistler. What did you think about it?
I didn't want to go back to any other bike afterwards. I'm glad that I've got my personal one at home, because otherwise I think I'd be depressed going back to a Bosch or a Shimano after riding that bike.
Wow.
It's crazy.
And also, Corey, so I've noticed something here as well. You're selling your analog bike, aren't you? You're selling your regular pedal bike. You're exclusively Eve now, aren't you?
ever
So-
since I got that bike.
Our work is done.
Yes, you've done it. So now we can't. You're not our resident analog biker. You're a regular pedal biker. You're now an e-bike, and that's purely because of the DJI bike, right?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah,
I mean, arguably, that has been the bike that's tipped you over the edge.
yeah, probably. Yeah.
That is the bit. That is the bike.
Well, no, yeah, maybe.
That was the bike that changed it, where you were willing to have that as your exclusive only mountain bike.
I think there is a small part of this that we're sort of going over, which is the fact they sent it to me.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
because
no,
I would
I
happily
agree, yeah.
ride like a Crestline with a Bosch motor if they sent me one, right?
No, I appreciate.
So
I appreciate that, and I think it's worth being honest about that. But the argument is, you didn't have to get rid of your other bike, did you?
No, I didn't, and I just thought I'm probably never going to ride that.
Yeah, it's the
normal
trail.
bike
It's
ever
the same.
again.
It's a similar weight trail bike without a motor, without a battery, without everything else that comes with it, right?
Not similar weight, probably about 4 or 5 kilos different.
Okay, but it's not that crazy from
It's
a
not.
regular pedal bike to an electric full powered bike. Full powered.
And I've got to say, a lot of people in Whistler were looking at his bike. They'd heard of it. They knew about it. Lots of people really intrigued about it.
Yeah.
It's probably the only one. There's not many in North
No.
America, as far as I know.
Yeah.
But it's not an enduro bike. It's a trail bike. But he rode A-Line on it. Sorry, Will, if you want to mention Steal Your Thunder here. But he rode
Well, check out
A-Line.
his video. Like it's insane. Like it's sick. And you only had one lap on it, right?
Yeah, it rode it, but I obviously would have been more comfortable on a downhill bike or something longer travel, like 180 travel. But it was fine. I know there was a lot of comments from people in the previous posts on Pink Bike and stuff. People saying the frame's not capable enough. The frame's just going to break, whatever. But I didn't feel it was any different from riding just a normal trail bike, like any other
Like a
bike
Stumpy
I've-
or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Go Duffy, do 150, 130 bike. Who needs it? That's it. The DJI Amflow bike is the one, the do it all
But
bike.
I was very pleasantly surprised because we were in Bellingham for a few days and then Whistler, and of those 5 days, Will was carrying a backpack. He was doing a lot of filming as well, so it's extra weight on it. He went down lots of double black diamond trails at Whistler. It wasn't just A-Line. We were in the bike park and we were outside. And the only thing that needed doing was the rear axle got loose.
Came loose, yeah.
I mean, it happens to
Can
loads
do.
of brands, yeah.
Yeah. So there's two things to me. There's the actual motor is legit. Like, we've not tested it long term, but in terms of power, it proved it in the short drag race. It wasn't just a small amount quicker. It pretty much annihilated the Bosch and the Pinion. And not long term, a week, there was no issues with it in a week. The other thing to test that no one's tried yet, as far as I've seen, is like a very long climb. Does it overheat? How much can you use that boost thing for? Like, when will it start to derate? But at the moment, I mean, it's amazing. It's a genuine, amazing piece of tech.
Will probably is one of the people who spent globally one of the most amount of time on the bike.
I think there's some of the
Tests.
demo tester guys that take it around to the dealers and stuff, which probably have spent more time on it.
Yeah, I'm
But
not saying
maybe
you're
one of them,
the
yeah.
most amount of time, but you out of most of the people, I mean, you're part of the not 1% of people who've actually ridden it for a
He
longer
was
period of
shredding
time.
that thing as well. He's
Oh,
doing.
please.
He was.
Please,
Come on, man. He's doing
please.
fat whips on A-Line.
No,
He was-
No, but like
Cruising.
and I was going to say, because it's not just A-Line you've ridden the bike at, you've ridden it another times, and I noticed the other day you went out in some classic, true British conditions, wintertime conditions. It was pissing it down.
Torrential rain, yeah.
Torrential rain, muddy, sloppy, everything. Did the bike skip a beat?
No, it didn't. The brakes weren't
Yeah,
too
the
happy.
brakes aren't
Okay,
good.
but that's fine. Like, there's got to be some cons, right? There's got to be some cons.
We need to find more cons with it.
Yeah.
Because
I found some cons actually.
did you?
Go on.
I found one very minor cosmetic con, which we both thought actually, which is that it scratches quite easily. Like, it's a dark bike. That's the black one anyway. I don't know about the silver one.
Yeah.
But that black bike, after that one day in the rain with
Muddy
all the
road.
grit and everything, like, it can see all the scratches in the clear coat. But I think that would happen to a lot of bikes, like dark coloured bikes.
Yeah, for sure. Black gloss clear coat will get scratched up and all the rest of it.
I mean, look at this, right? This is just from the video. I remember taking off and it just wheeling.
And it's got an anti-wheelie mode still.
I don't know if it has, but it didn't feel like it in there. But you can tell the pace of it already going up that hill. That hill doesn't look steep at all. It is steep and it's quite loose. One thing that I was quite curious of is when we were riding in the US on some of the wet trails, steep trails, I did find the Bosch motor very refined in delivering the power, and it didn't want to spin the rear wheel at all. It was very easy, even in turbo, to ride up very wet, kind of greasy routes and stuff. And I asked Will how his was, and I think yours, did you say yours spun up a little bit?
It did have quite a lot of wheel spin. And I saw on your forum as well that someone had commented saying, oh, I've had my bike for a week. Does anyone know if you can turn down the power? Because even in trail mode, they were spinning out on the climbs. Yeah. Which to me, I just find it more fun if your wheel spins. But if you're a proper climber and you want to get up something smoothly, I think you said in your new Mondraker video, actually, that Bosch, the new Bosch motor's like one of the best climbing motors there are, basically. And I agree, like after when we rode it the first time on that Focus, like climbing up some of that, you remember that steep loam stuff we climbed up? Like you just got up there no problem, basically. Whereas I think that DJI motor would just wheel spin all the way up.
It's like it's got all the power, but it hasn't quite got the refined feeling that the Bosch has in delivering it to the rear wheel. But I do think that's only software, and it does have that, is it tone wheel?
The tone wheel,
the tone wheel on the back.
Yeah.
What's the tone wheel?
So the tone wheel
I think I know what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So the regular Bosch has a single speed sensor on either the disc magnet, or most commonly now it's on the rim magnet. Yeah. On the where the valve stem goes. Yeah. So it can judge your speed one rotation. Whereas the DJI has a little tone wheel. It looks like an ABS kind of thing that you'd get on a motorbike, and it's got 50 sensors, 50 holes, so it can sense it 50 times per wheel rotation. Or something like that. I can't remember exactly how many it's got, but it's got way more than one. It's got loads.
So surely that should deal out that should be a better way to give incremental and adjustable power throughout a rotation of a wheel. So you'd think it would act better. But like you guys have mentioned beforehand, that at the lower torquier speeds, it's not as controlled. It's a little bit more surgy. I mean, the fact is in the video, you wheel spun and
it's like a hot rod, man.
And that's the thing, is like, that's cool.
Yeah.
But in terms of a complete picture, I mean, personally, between those three bikes, I'm still more inclined towards the Nikolai as a complete package, as a bike that will, I describe it as a forever bike. It's a bike that I don't, the motor doesn't seem like it's going to have loads of issues, especially mechanically. It seems like the belt drive is something that's just going to last for ages. Doesn't matter about the slop or anything like that. Obviously, the build, you've got it, and you've got some pretty swanky bits on there with the Inten BC parts, but the rest of it is how you spec it. And the motor and the bike itself, there's so little to go wrong in terms of how complete the bike is. And again, like you said, it's got that ability to crawl up stuff. It's more of a tank in terms of how it rides.
It's definitely a tank. That's what people put people off of that bike, right? Is the fact it's like 28 kg.
This is not quite that. I think with the Explorer kit and all the guards, I think this build was like 25 and a half, maybe 26. It's not light. I can't remember the exact weight, but it was lighter than I thought. But this in gear one has 160 Newton meters.
It's crazy.
Which, I've said it before, when we're in Finale and we're doing those rock climbs, you could just rock crawl. In gear one, super slow, it would just get up the climbs. But when you start getting into the harder gears, the faster gears, it's not quite, it's nowhere near the Pinion, nowhere near the DJI.
So then between the Pinion and the Bosch then, because the Bosch sounds like they've really refined it. Obviously, I think the biggest, correct me if I'm wrong, the biggest jump with Bosch this year is how quiet it is.
And how smooth it is.
Okay, so the smoothness and maybe the Pinion isn't, obviously they're a smaller company, it's not quite as refined, and they haven't been in the e-bike game as long as Bosch have, but they seem to have done something to a similar effect with that Pinion bike, which is it changes the torque with your gear you're in, so it expects like a big easy climbing gear should be grippy and torquey and give you loads of that slow release power, for lack of a better word. And Bosch has kind of done that now with Gen 5 in terms of how it deals out the power a little bit, but it's smoother and it's a bit more refined with its firmware.
It still feels for want of a better word, rough in some places, the Pinion. It still feels a little bit like it's a bit wild. Like sometimes you get a little surge of power, and the Bosch is very much, as cheesy as this sounds, a connection, an extension of your body. Like you put more power in, it gives it to you. I know it sounds really marketing
flow. You've got some uphill flows there.
It sounds really marketing-y, but it is. It's genuinely so sensitive. You ease up on the pedals, it eases up. It gives you overrun when you need it. You stomp down, it gives you that overboost. Whereas the Pinion feels a little bit more like a Gen 1. Like this is a Bosch Gen 5. It's apparently not a Gen 5, but we've all been calling it Gen 5.
What is it then?
It's
Gen
a
4?
BDU 38, which is like the
It rolls off the tongue.
It's the worst name ever for a new motor. We call it a Gen 5 because the old one was a Gen. Anyway.
Yeah.
So this Pinion is definitely a Gen 1. And I love the tech. I love how it works and feels and all the benefits that it brings. But the motor performance definitely feels to me a bit more rough compared to, it's like going back a couple of gens on the Bosch in terms of the power delivery, and just it feels like they've most of the energy and expertise has gone into creating an MGU, but all of that stuff can be improved with software, I believe.
I feel like the MGU still feels more modern than the Bosch, even though, you know, technology-wise and all the rest of it may not actually be nearly as advanced as the Bosch. But it's that different approach, you know, and like I feel like the DJI's kind of done that, but so used to like, oh, what's an update on a motor now? Oh, we made it a bit more efficient, a little bit more torquey, a little bit quieter. But then Pinion MGU just goes, ha-ha, blow that out of the water. That's completely different. And the DJI has kind of done that because it's so much smaller. And I think the DJI has done that more through battery tech and the style of bike being full powered but lightweight.
I think the DJI is just everything about it is really good. Like the screen, the battery, the motor, the size, the integration, the app.
Who needs a lightweight bike? Who needs a lightweight bike?
This is a topic for another video.
No,
Are lightweight bikes dead? All right, moving on. We got some new e-bikes that we want to cover. So we rode Mondraker's new Crafty Carbon RR in Finale, which was super cool. So this is using the new Bosch motor. Everything's using the new Bosch at the moment, which is really cool. It is a 160. What's that?
It's not cool for Shimano.
No. What is? I don't know.
But Shimano about 3 years ago was on every bike.
Yeah.
It's like Bosch had a trailing off, and then it was like, oh, we're building up. There's something new coming. It's like the Bosch and Shimano flux has kind of happened now, but everything's coming out. New Bosch, new Bosch, new Bosch.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with whatever Shimano bring out next, because the competition is fierce.
I reckon EP9.
So this is a 160 front and 150 rear. And it is like a aggressive trail bike, super trail bike maybe. It's 64.5 degree head angle. It's got either an 800 watt hour or 600 watt hour removable battery that is super quick. 1 5mm Allen key to remove. Get this, long chain stays.
Yay!
For me. It's got 455 or 465 chain stays, depending on which size you go for. So size specific. 5 sizes, the biggest 2 get the 465. The price is pretty good. I think the RR version is £7,800 roughly, with SRAM transmission, Fox suspension. So I enjoyed spending a couple of days in it out in Finale.
I don't know if it's safe to say. I mean, all Mondrakers look really similar, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of like their what did you call it? Their design language?
Yeah.
I like that. I like the.
I didn't coin that phrase.
No, I know, but the design language of Mondraker is very coherent between each model. But for some reason, I feel like I like the look of this one more. I feel like it's lower on the back, and the longer chainstay look more appropriate on this bike. Now, I am not the biggest fan of a longer chainstay. I'm the anti-Rob, as it were. No, I'm not anti-Rob. No, I'm not anti-Rob. No, I'm not a super short chainstay. I'm not a super short chainstay, but I'm not a longer kind of, like you say, your ratio. But that looks more fitting. I don't know why. I think just off the bat, I'm like, that looks really balanced.
It's like proportionally, it kind of works, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The front to the rear kind of work. The aesthetics of it. It's a nice looking bike. It's got the down tube's quite chunky because it can house both 600 and 800. So they've had to beef it up a little bit. But I quite like the look of it. It rode very well. There was some things that I didn't like. The tyres were pants because they were
what like trail tires?
2.6 front and rear Max Terra Maxis, and they actually said it's a harder compound Max Terra. It's a slightly different compound in the 2.6.
Why have they gone for 2.6s?
I don't know. It's only on this model I think that we rode because the higher up model has like max grip at least, but it's one of those bikes that with the 2.6 tyres, it was kind of comfortable to ride along fire roads and stuff. But as soon as you hit like rock and things like that in some of those courses in Finale, it was too pingy and I couldn't get enough grip. And it just felt like it was really held back by having those tyres. Tyres make such a big difference.
Indeed.
So I went and I was like, Will, we need to sack off these tyres. So we went to a bike shop and bought a new set of tyres.
No way.
Yeah, it was just...
Did it make a big difference?
Massive.
Yeah.
Night and day. So I went from 2.6 Max Terra to 2.4 DH Max Grip tyres and an Assegai 2.5. It transformed the bike. It really did. The Recharged podcast is sponsored by The Electric Bike Shop, the e-bike specialists. They've been selling e-bikes since 2017 from their first store in Bristol. And since then, they've rapidly grown from that single shop to now 10 stores across the UK with more planned for 2024. The Electric Bike Shop supply a host of major e-bike brands, plus a ton of parts and accessories in stock. The Electric Bike Shop are highly reviewed by real customers, and they've achieved an excellent status on Trustpilot.com with hundreds of reviews. They offer free UK delivery, highly competitive pricing with price matching. They take part in the Cycle to Work scheme, and they carry literally thousands of e-bikes in stock for quick delivery. They also offer test rides where you can get hands-on with the bike so you can try different sizes. There's really nothing like getting on a bike and trying out the size for real to make sure you get the right bike size for you. So check them out at theelectricbikeshop.co.uk where you can see the range, or you can even book a test ride direct from their website at one of their 10 nationwide stores. Thanks again to the Electric Bike Shop for sponsoring the Recharged podcast.
Did you ever ride on it, Will?
No, well, on the bike I did, but I got the old rubbish tyres, so I had to ride around Finale with.
You had the new bike, didn't you?
But you didn't feel like buying tyres for my bike.
You said you love those tyres.
Yeah, you're a
They
fat
were
bike.
fast rolling.
But again, so the reason I was asking that is it's good to get an opinion because obviously Mondraker have been hot on it with loads of new e-bikes at the moment. I mean, in the past year, how many e-bikes they released? Like at least 4 or 5 new different models. How does this compare to say what was the most recent one that had a full power bike that was released?
Well, they bought out the June XR.
That's the one.
So that was the SX motor, so the lighter weight.
Okay, yeah, and ride feel is like not so much a weight thing, but like suspension.
Completely different.
Like,
so different, I think, in the way they rode.
In just some nuggets of differences there.
Well, I think the first bike, the June, has a 4.48 chainstay, and this has a 4.65. So instantly, your weight is so different on the bike. The front is loaded a lot more. It's got the full power motor. It is heavier. It's a 2929, and the other one was a mullet.
MX. So I'm assuming the reason that it's got a shorter chainstay is because the MX thing, because the mullet mixed wheel size. Because the other reason I was like, a longer travel bike would surely be better to having a long chainstay to be more balanced. You'd think trail bike, tucked in back. I mean, the DJI has like a 440,
445 and
445.
Well, they said they wanted this to be the best climbing bike they've ever made.
So they want it to be planted.
So with a long chainstay, it's like you've got a wheelie bar out the back. It's really difficult to I can't wheelie very well anyway, but it's very difficult to lift the front because it's so stable. So as long as you can carry on spinning, that bike will just go.
Plow up.
It'll just plow up and it will plow down. The long chainstay is not for everybody. You said it's not for you. It definitely is slower in the really tight stuff to maneuver. You can corner it and it's very balanced, but maneuvering it in and out the twisty stuff I found more difficult.
I felt that as well, coming from normally riding shorter chainstay bikes. I remember I said it when we hit those berms on the first day. I was like, this feels so weird to ride. I think it's just because I'm not used to it.
It feels really different.
The old analog Dune XR was like a Mondraker that I spent a bit of time on, and I always that was a long bike that you kind of had to, because I was used to riding slightly shorter travel bikes, but slightly shorter bikes in general. I was sitting in the middle of the bike when I was going around a berm being like, do I lean back? Do I go forwards? And I washed out the front a few times because it was so much longer, and I was like trying to take the weight off the front end a little bit. Yeah, it was weird. And I feel like as much as that's a good thing, on a trail bike, it doesn't feel as apt.
Yeah, I think it's good to have choice. And I do think size-specific chainstays do make sense, whatever the type of bike is, because it then means that a small rider has the same distribution of weight as a extra large bike. So anyway, the bike rode really well. There was something with the shock tune. The rebound was so fast. Because I'm a bit heavier, more PSI, needs a little bit more rebound damping. Yeah. I couldn't get it slow enough. It was so pingy in the back. I noticed in the videos, Will got some absolute banging video, but the back kept like bucking up and I could feel it. And I had to kind of consciously not get my weight too far forward because I didn't want to get pinged forward. So I had to let more PSI out the shock to calm it down a bit.
Gone polar opposite. Because like 4 or 5 years ago, or like when e-bikes were really starting to emerge, everything was overdamped. Everything was like, oh, let's be a bit. No, I'm saying in previous older bikes, it was like, oh, let's slow the rebound down. Let's make sure it's all slow because we don't want anything to be too kicky with the weight and throw anyone off. And now it's kind of gone the other way where they're going, oh, you need faster rebound because the weight of it's going to slow it down. So you need it to be able to be reactive and poppy and playful.
I think some of it's down to rider weight. If somebody's 60, 65 kilos, there's not as much air in there. The spring's not got as much force.
It was pretty
behind
fast still for me.
Was it?
Yeah, really fast.
Yeah,
too fast.
How slow? How many clicks from close?
Oh, it was fully slow, and I wanted it slower.
Fully close.
I like the rear slow normally, but it couldn't go slow enough, the shock, for me.
Interesting. So the tune was a little bit off, and the seat post insertion is still limited. I just kind of got away with it.
There's limits to what you can do with a frame design like that because the seat tube doesn't go all the way down. It splits above the shock. I mean, like that would require not a Mondraker, unfortunately. That would require a bike that doesn't look a Mondraker to have to do almost like what Santa Cruz have done with the Valor.
Unless you just run a really short dropper. But then, so we're getting so close to the perfect bike. That's got so many things that are going for it. And I really enjoyed the time on it. And it was like a plow in a straight line. You could just smash through everything. Right, a couple more e-bikes. Next, we've got the Cotic Rocket e-bike. British-made steel.
Why are we all silent here? I'm a big steel frame fan.
Okay.
However, I've never seen a steel e-bike that's ever looked good, and I hate to say it. External batteries are so old, right?
I bet that rides really well.
Do you?
I bet it does ride really well. Although the weight looks to me like it's quite high. Lots of designers are trying to get the weight low, but I cannot give any opinion on how it rides because I've not ridden it. I think it's fair play to Cotic to doing something different outside of the norm and trying to make an e-bike look like a normal bike or look aesthetically pleasing. There's something about it that I really like. There's also something about it that I think is really retro and kind of reminds me of bikes that were developed into being e-bikes back in the day when they were first making e-bikes.
It was like mountain bike frames where they'd go, okay, well, we're just, instead of welding a bottom bracket shell on here, we're just going to cut the tubes a little bit shorter and we're going to weld our motor-specific mount on there. And we're still going to have our down tube mounted battery. And I don't know. In this day and age, in the e-bike market as it is, having an external battery is just going to be a hard sell, no? Like, we've just talked about some of the like cutting edge motors and all the rest of it. Surely there's a way to find a battery that could mount into a round steel down tube.
I don't think there is, man. I think it'll end up being too heavy. It's given me vibes of this Radon Swoop here that I rode back in the day that I actually really liked. It's got like an alloy frame with the battery mounted onto the down tube.
You're not wrong. It's not too dissimilar. I think
obviously it's not the same. It's aluminium. It's steel. The Cotic is made in the UK. It's got real interesting ride properties and characteristics, and lots of fans of it. I just think it's going to be a hard sell with a 400 and whatever the battery is.
So there's 3 different battery options. I think you get a 418, a 504, and a 630. are the 3 different options. But with that, the battery gets taller, it just looks less in place. I believe that all the photos we've seen of it, like that one there, is the 418 watt hour battery on there.
We're just using MBR's article. They've done a good overview, so check that out.
And it's got an alloy rear end, steel front triangle. And again, I'm a big fan of steel bikes. I think they look great, but as soon as you put a battery on there, it almost looks unfitting. And in my eyes, there's a purist thing of like, if you're getting a steel bike, it's not an e-bike. And that's just the way it is. There is no steel e-bikes.
It's not very beautiful, is it?
I wonder if part of it's because we're looking at a side-on stark picture of the side and your attention is drawn to that. Like,
Okay, there's
There's other
shots.
photos. There's a few, so 5 dev cranks, right?
That looks crazy with the battery out of it.
apparently you can take it out in 10 seconds, the battery, so you can swap it. So it's super quick and easy. It's got a key, but you can transfer it into a regular pedal bike in about 10 minutes by taking off the bracket, like the whole battery thing. You still got a motor on there, so it's not, you know... I don't know, man. I'd like to ride that. I think it looks pretty cool. It's a lot of money. It's £8,700 starting price.
Starting price
8,799, and I think it goes up to like 11 grand or something. Find a good picture.
So yeah, without a side-on shot, it doesn't look quite as obvious that there's just a battery mounted onto a down tube. Like the shots like that, they look more fitting. It's still a bit of a stretch for that price. 8,799 for a bike, which in theory that's the base price. So that's going to have the smallest battery and the motor. How much is that Mondraker Crafty XR?
It's like 7,699 roughly. Give or take
cheaper
£100.
with a bigger battery, more powerful motor, full carbon frame, better spec.
Can I quickly say something? I think this bike, do you think they've aimed it more at people that are hardcore Cotic fans? Because these are people that love the brand Cotic but also want an e-bike, as opposed to competing with other e-bikes like the Mondraker, for example.
Perhaps. I also think from a business perspective, they'll want to attract as many customers as possible.
Yeah.
So yes, I think there'll be Cotic fans out there who will love this and love the fact they've got an e-bike and buy it. I think for people that are outside of that, they're potential customers as well. And maybe it's going to be tougher compared to something that you just mentioned, the Mondraker bike. But fair play, man. I've got to say, fair play to Cotic for going out. There's a whole development story that we've not touched on. They did try lots of different frames. They tried aluminium. They tried different kind of styles of integrating it. They tried different shrouds around the battery to hide it. And in the end, it came down to look. It might not look as aesthetically pleasing as some other e-bikes, but the ride is supposed to be like amazing on the bike, and that's what we ride bikes for, right?
And like you said, I think all the development and everything that led up to it, steel is real. Like all those people who love steel bikes, who now everyone's getting on e-bikes, aren't they?
Yeah.
And if they're going, I still love a steel bike and I want a steel e-bike, is there any others on the market?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think there is any others on the market. So Steel is real. This is for all those Steel is real fans. This is that bike that is the sweet spot in the Venn diagram of Cotic's customer base.
I'm not a Steel is real fan, but I think look at that trail there, that location. I would definitely get on that bike and no doubt have a riot riding that. So well done, Cotic. Right, next up we've got Pivot's new Shuttle LT.
What motor?
Well, let's go through some of the stats. So Pivot Shuttle LT, this is the new one, right? So yes, this is a new one. So they've moved over to Bosch. Now, what's really interesting is a couple of things. They're using not the new Bosch motor. So they're using the Bosch Gen 4, we'll call it, race motor. They're using a 750 battery, and that's kind of stuff that came out in 2022, which is interesting because everyone's releasing bikes with the new Bosch motor, the Gen 5, which is quieter and a bit more refined on the power delivery. And they've got the new batteries, which are half a kilo lighter than the 750 that Pivot are using. So the timing is quite intriguing. I'm not quite sure if this bike was delayed or, I don't know, maybe they got I don't know the reasons why it's come out now. But to me, it's a bike that's, I'm going to call it a premium price. It is, Finale. Yeah. So it's a premium priced e-bike, but it's not got the latest tech on it. And I know the e-bike market is so into getting the latest stuff, because when you spend your money, you want to make sure you've got something that is brand new, fresh, and relevant. I don't know what your guys.
There's such big jumps in tech.
Yeah,
there's such big jumps in tech that you feel like you're going to be left in the dust, unfortunately. But I have to say that's a race limited edition motor that is available on all models, regardless of the spec on them around them. It was almost like the limited edition race motors were always the top spec model of a range of other Bosch spec versions of that bike.
So you had to get the premium one, right?
Now you can get a lesser spec with that race motor, and that race motor is still quite different to the new Bosch Gen 5 in terms of its performance, correct?
Well, the power is exactly the same. So they both have 85 newton meters and 600 watts. The main difference is the software tune. The race motor's got a 2 meter overrun, and it's got 400% assist rather than 340. Now, what that means is it times your rider input by 400% to get the maximum power. It's a little bit of a marketing kind of speak about how it delivers power, but essentially you need to be delivering 150 watts of leg power to get 600 watts. Whereas the new Gen 5, you need to be delivering 177 watts of leg power to get the 600 watts.
That big maths guy, look at this guy. Whoa.
Only because I was intrigued and I tried to work what the difference is.
It's good. I think, but that's a really good way of laying it out, because obviously they've got the peak wattage and that's where you need to get to. And I think that's a really good way of describing it, because again, like some people measure watts in their riding and you can get an idea of how much effort you're putting in. I think that the Pivot is kind of like the Cotic.
Okay.
In the way that
damn, it's not cheap.
Pivot
it's
fans are
$15,000.
Pivot fans. I think they're quite hardcore. There's a much bigger market in the US than we see here in the UK, but there is an emerging market for pivots in the UK. I feel like Pivot, another Santa Cruz.
Okay.
It was almost like the torch has been handed over from that. Oh, I'm always a Santa Cruz fan. Now it's like, oh, I'm always a Pivot fan. Maybe. I think that's where they're seeing this as, and there's still a lot of people who want that race motor.
Yeah.
And is it backwards compatible, that motor, with the new battery?
Technically, yes, but they haven't made it take the new battery. Yeah, so the down tube is it's the wrong size. It's only got the 750. So I don't know, man. It's $8,700 for the entry level, and the top ones go up to like $13,500 and $13,500.
But let me make a point with those. Is they've all got Neo, the new Fox Neo on them, the wireless suspension. So anything that is the top two specs. So you got Pro, Exo, Eagle transmission, Neo Live with range extender for $12,000.
But don't you think the people that want to buy like the Neo want all the latest stuff? Because the Neo's only just come out.
It's a good point. But Pivot, funny enough, are one of the first launch partners with the old Fox suspension, electronic suspension system. So I wonder if that's related into it. It's two separate things.
What was interesting is when we were at the Bosch Gen 5 launch thing at Bosch in Germany, they were using Pivot as their on-screen marketing material with the new motor. But it had an adapter plate on it. Do you remember?
I remember that. That's a good point.
So we all thought, there's a new Pivot coming out with a new motor. But they just like hacked on the new motor onto the old frame with an adapter plate.
And then they're like, don't worry, we're launching a new Pivot LT. And then just completely take a left turn. That's a really good point.
So I've got to say, I bet this Pivot rides very well. And actually, I've read some reviews and lots of people are saying it does ride really well. Like, no doubt about it, it will be an amazing bike to ride. It will probably be a great competitor to bikes in terms of the handling and the way it rides. But part of me thinks they've missed a bit of a trick because it's got the previous gen stuff on. And reading all the forum comments, all the messages that I get, people just are actually picking bikes by the motor now. They're not picking them by the build kit, or they're not saying I want a bike with a Fox build. They're saying I want a bike with a Bosch Gen 5 motor, or I want the DJI.
And the reality is now, how many Bosch Gen 5 motorbikes are out now? We've got the Crestline RS 180 that's just come out. We've got the Mondraker Crafty XR. We've got the Focus Jam Squared. Yep. We've got the Cube.
Yeah.
God knows the name.
177 and 144.
Yeah.
Hybrid.
Yes.
Let's get on to the details. What else is there?
There's probably a couple that we've missed.
Yeah,
the
there's
Santa Cruz Valor.
Santa Cruz Valor.
Yeah.
And again, so it's like, it's not like you've got that or something, you know, the pivot and something else to choose from. Oh, I want the Gen 5, but the pivot hasn't got it. The pivot's got the other spec I want. I'll go for the pivot. No, it's like, I mean, arguably the USP, the unique selling point of that product is one of the few new bikes that's coming out with a Bosch Gen 4 race motor. Is that a big enough selling point? Probably not.
If it was a really good price, maybe. It's still $8,500.
Will is slowly
Hey.
shaking his head side to side going,
So I've got two Crestlines demo bikes, one with a Bosch race motor and one with a new Bosch Gen 5. Personally, I would never choose the Bosch race motor bike now after riding the Gen 5. The Gen 5 is so much smoother. The quietness of it makes a massive difference.
Yeah, you've been talking about how quiet it is, and I think that even in the motor shootout video, you know, the thing that beat the DJI and the Pinion was how quiet the Bosch motor. Over any of them, it is the quietest, even over the DJI with the whirring and the Pinion with its clunks and knocks and bunks.
Well, you remember riding the Crestline in Finale after riding the Pinion.
It was loud as hell. So rattly. Annoying.
Yeah.
But the new version is so quiet. So much better.
Makes a huge difference. So again, it's another e-bike that's come out and the timing's kind of weird. Who knows why? Maybe it's the bike for somebody. Maybe it's not because of people that want all the latest stuff.
How big
maybe
is that
not gonna
front
choose
rotor,
it.
though?
The front rotor.
It's like a
Looks like-
240.
No, it looks like a Galfa 223, I reckon, on there.
Okay.
And the bike looks really good. I bet
does.
Yeah, I
rides
think it's a
well.
really, really good looking bike.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, pivots do ride well.
Yeah.
DW Link suspension. So, no, it's a good looking bike. I'm interested to see, though, will the pivot come up with a Bosch Gen 5 in the near future, or is it going to be like a year till they've maybe sold through some of these before they start releasing a Gen 5? Do they see the race motor and the Gen 5 as a direct competitor to each other, or do they maybe in their eyes the race motor is still so different to anything else that they see it as it's the benefits they want, or it's a dedicated race bike? Is it?
Well, racing's gone, isn't it? E-bike
Yeah.
racing's dead.
Is
It's
it?
gone. They've cancelled it.
What?
Yeah, they've completely cancelled e-bike racing for 2025.
You just
That's for
ruined
next
this day.
episode. What? What?
Yeah, it's gone, man. Completely gone.
You're out the loop, bro.
I'm well out of the loop.
Yeah,
Jeez.
that tells you how long it's been since we did a last poddy.
And on that note,
We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more, and we'll catch you soon.